Witam wszystkich serdecznie. Dzisiaj wyjątkowo będzie po angielsku i wieczorem. Hello everybody. There is a very special meeting today because there is a breakfast, but it's afternoon actually, and we are in English. So it's kind of an English breakfast, not a breakfast really. So just to cut to the chase, the three pillars of the T organizations are self-organization, self-management, the purpose, and the wholeness. I guess we covered this many times so I'm just reminding you that this is actually the three pillars. And we are actually a community, and we started about 6 years ago. So this is a picture from our conference held in Krakow in 2019. And as you can see, the community is growing. So today's topic is actually how politics combines with technology, and we will talk about, let's call it a SWOT. I just shortened it, but it's about how it really works. And we will cover some case studies, so it will be, in my opinion, extremely interesting topic to cover. And our two guests today is, let me just make it bigger. So Dr. Katarzyna Anna Klimowicz and Dr. David, they will be coming with us in a moment. So let me just tell you, they are very experienced, and these are the people that are really into this topic. So I'm very excited to be host of today's event. And let me just introduce you, David and Katarzyna. Welcome.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Łukasz, for your introduction. It is a great honor and pleasure to present and discuss yet another time some big questions concerning the possibilities of implementation of horizontal and decentralized models of organization in public sphere together with the TIL community. Today, I'm particularly excited because my colleague David Dueñas-Cid, who is a great expert in the subject of digital democracy and iVoting, has agreed to join us today. So directly after saying a few more sentences about my own activity for those who are joining us in this series for the first time, I will pass the voice directly to him. So my name is Katarzyna Klimowicz, and I have received my PhD title from the University of Warsaw, and I'm specializing in political philosophy. In particular, my main field of expertise are so-called democratic innovations, so new forms of participation based on alternative or complementary models of democracy, such as participatory, deliberative, liquid, or digital models of democracy. For many years now, I have been combining academic research with political and social activism. I'm a Humanity in Action Senior Fellow and an experienced coordinator of international projects such as European Democracy Network and Democratic Innovations in Youth Work. Currently, I'm also a textbook
I guess you broke up. Yeah. David, you are still here with us, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I guess something is wrong on the Katarzyna's end, technically.
Maybe I can step in, and when she will rejoin, then she can continue with her presentation.
Please do.
Well, in fact, then, my name, as I've been introduced, I'm David Dueñas-Cid. I'm originally from Catalonia. I'm living in Warsaw for a few years. I'm now having a Marie Curie grant in Gdańsk University of Technology, but I'm generally working at Koźmiński University in Warsaw, and I'm associate professor there, and I'm researching on topics related with digital democracy. As has been said, I'm the general chair at the eVote ID conference, which is the main conference in internet voting worldwide, and it's already been for some years that we are organizing this conference and discussing the new steps that are being taken on internet voting, electronic voting, and all sorts of electoral technologies. And at the same time, I'm the president of a thematic group on digital sociology at the International Sociological Association and program chair at an international conference on digital government research. So I'm pretty much connected with the topic of electronic democracy and all the things that are connected with it. And if you want, maybe you could share the presentation, and meanwhile we wait for Kasia to join back, which seems that it's happening.
I'm back. I had some technical issues. I don't even know
Kasia.
when it stopped.
Hey, can you upload the presentation once again, please? If not, then I can do it. No problem. Let me do it.
Yeah, maybe it will be better. You can go directly to the
Yes,
fourth
sure.
slide, because I already introduced
Yes, so
myself.
I guess you already covered who you are. Okay. Here.
Yeah. So anyway, I will start. I mean, the idea that we had with Kasia is that we are going to combine our presentation. So I will start and then she will continue, and we will be coming back and forth to make a bit of a dialogue, because we have different types of expertise. And therefore, I think it can be a good way for both of us to present the work that we are doing. So I would like to start with a brief historical approach, but really brief, because the goal of that is not to bore the people talking about history and so on. But the question is that the history of humankind has been a story of growing complexity. Every step that we are making in our evolution as social beings, it's increasing the complexity of our organization and of the things that we can do. And at the same time, it's increasing the complexity of the types of management that we have. So, for example, if you see one of these big bubbles, the first one that refers to the history of the traditional Greek democracy, where all the decisions were taken in the agora, in the public space, where all the citizens who have political rights were able to make decisions. This system was quite valid for kind of local societies, but then when we turned to be like more complex nation states after the French Revolution, this system was not able to provide anymore to guarantee the democratic rights. So we had to reach other levels of management of democracy, in which we started organizing what we still understand today as elections, general elections. We are being called one day in a certain amount of time, periodically, free elections, fair elections, and so on, in which we can cast our votes, and then we can delegate the power to someone else. What happens in this step for increasing complexity, increasing social complexity? Recently, digital technologies stepped in. And digital technologies are changing almost all the things that we are doing in our life, how we meet people, how we talk about things, how we are buying, how we are selling things, how we are interconnecting, how we are traveling, how we are doing everything. And democracy is not being a side of that. Democracy, it's also making some steps to adopt technologies on their common use. And therefore, that brings the question, if the same tools that we were using to take decisions in the past, they are still valid today. I mean, they're obviously still valid because we are still using them, but the question, therefore, is what can technology provide to these types of decision-making process, so in a way that they can be more effective, that they can be faster, but at the same time that we are not adding new risks to the things that we are doing because of technology. So if we can pass to the next slide. One before. As I said, society is growing in complexity, and we can see how every time more the dimension of the decisions that we need to make, they go higher and higher, bigger and bigger, from local decisions to national decisions to global decisions. Later, probably with Kasia, we will have an interesting discussion, because normally my approach to the topic is more connected with national decision making, and some of the technologies that she's discussing and that she's expert in, they refer to local decision making, and therefore there is an interesting dialogue between two levels of decision making. But still, we need to remember that nowadays the decisions that we make, either at local, either at national, they have a big impact on the global, and the global has a big impact on the other two. So all the things, they are somehow intertwined. What happens? That we live in a society that's every time more interconnected, that we have every time more people who is living abroad. We had one example recently in the Polish elections, seeing how the massive mobilization of Poles who are living outside the country was changing somehow some of the expected results on the elections and so on. So the use of technology, for example, can help to absorb the inconvenience of this type of mobile society that we are living in. So the queues that you could see, all of you on the television, of people that they went that they were in London embassy, they were queuing for how many hours, blah, blah, blah. Technology could have done that in a way faster and could keep these people engaged in future elections in an easier manner. So anyway, another topic that is related with that is the fact that we are witnessing for the first time a democratic backslide in many levels. If you see the first graphic that you have upstairs, you can see, I mean, it's a pity that it's a bit small, but anyway, I hope that you can distinguish the colors. Red colors are places where red and orange are countries where full democracies are not existing. And we could see, for example, how at the end of the Soviet Union, there was a big increase on the 90s of many countries that were adopting democratic systems. And we can see, for example, in the last 5-6 years, how there is a generalized decline, not big, hopefully, but still we can see how some countries, they are making some step back in the democratic regimes that they are doing. So anyway, there are many things that are happening in the local, global, national development of democracy and decision making, that's hand by hand with technology. It puts on us the question of how is the future of democracy, how we are going to shape the future of democracy, and how can technology contribute to respond to these challenges that I was somehow debriefing in this fast presentation. And here Kasia probably will take the voice and will continue, and I will join back in a while.
Thank you, David. Yes, I think that before going more deeply in this subject of the future of democracy and particularly digital democracy, we can start from asking ourselves some really basic questions. Namely, for example, what do we need new technologies for? I know it's not very popular to question the use of digital tools in the times when almost everything is becoming digitalized and technology is often glorified and brought as a universal answer for almost all the most pressing problems and challenges of contemporary times, including climate changes and sustainable development. Which makes me think that it's all the more worth considering whether it's really the case that new technologies, including artificial intelligence, are able to solve our problems or rather contribute even more to their intensification. As a preliminary step, it is therefore crucial for me to realize that digital tools are just tools. And that it is up to the people themselves to decide how those tools are designed, programmed, and how they are going to be used. So it seems to me particularly important to ask each other those seemingly simple questions, following the provocative thought of Cedric Price, who was a great thinker, inspiring people to reconsider the impact of technological progress on architecture. Following his path, we should first ask ourselves what actually do we want to achieve by introducing digital tools in our everyday lives and politics. So what are our intentions? And also maybe we should also try to predict, following the old good precautionary principle, what could be their impact. Unfortunately, I don't think many people nowadays keep on asking themselves those basic questions, taking more an a priori cyber optimistic position that technologies are something good for human beings and our planet, while on the contrary, there are also those cyber pessimists who reject technological progress regardless of the potential benefits that may result from them. So we are here with you today, together with David. I think also to balance a bit these extreme positions and find some truth in the middle, following the so-called Aristotle's golden mean. The main and hopes related to the application of digital tools in politics may sound a little bit like a science fiction movie scenario, in the sense that at the very beginning of the trend, so already in the late 90s, together with the development of the global internet network, people's cyber optimistic visions were directed towards a greater decentralization, accountability, greater transparency in public decision making. There was also a big interest and desire to implement in action alternative models of democracy, such as direct participatory liquid democracy with the use of digital tools on a large scale, which also related to the attempt to apply horizontal governance structures and practices to public administration. So you can understand it as a mix of teal organization with the use of online collective decision-making platforms and electronic voting, which responds to the growing desire of our local, regional, but also international communities to become more democratic, autonomous, but also connected and with a greater direct influence on decisions that concern us all. This slide is just a small reminder for those who participated in our last meeting on democratic language. That's a slide about the variety of meanings of the term democracy and various models that most of the people are not actually aware of, because we're so fixated on the dominant model, that of representative democracy, which is actually only one of many possible and at the same time the most criticized form of democracy. Already for many decades, there is a talk about the crisis of representative democracy based on competition of political parties and traditional electoral mechanisms. So also declining trends of civic engagement and public trust, declining voters' turnouts, cases of corruption, and other numerous distortions of the current political systems based on the representative model. And in response to those distortions, we can say there is also a growing number of democratic innovators, academic researchers, but also practitioners, activists, militants, political leaders, deriving from grassroots social movements, who instead of focusing on the flaws of this dysfunctional system, decided to develop, implement, and promote alternative, or some people say complementary solutions. So at the beginning of my doctoral research many years ago, I found it extremely fascinating. But there's so many constructive ideas and movements which actually break out of the traditional way of thinking about politics, and how does it work in practice. And as the basis for my research, I selected a number of international case studies. On this slide, you can see their logos. So these are case studies of what I further called network parties. So horizontally organized political parties with tech-savvy leaders who derive their ideas and their members originate from grassroots progressive movements, such as Indignados and Podemos in Spain. Their decentralized structures are based on local circles and the use of digital tools, including specially designed online platforms, which enable direct involvement of their members and citizens in collective governance and decision making. And here I will give some concrete examples. Because after analyzing the organizational models of those movements, digital, or how I personally call them network parties, I also went deeper in studying the functioning and the features of their online participatory tools. So, for example, it was the City in Barcelona open source platform used by Barcelona en Comú activist urban movement that won local elections in the capital city of Catalonia. Then it was a more controversial example. We can also discuss it more in details afterwards. It's a privately owned platform, significantly called Rousseau, developed by the leaders of the Movimento 5 Stelle in Italy. And finally, the example of liquid feedback system, which enables the pirate parties around the world to implement their ideal of liquid democracy system, which in short is a hybrid of representative and direct model of democracy with the use of digital tools known also as a delegative form of digital democracy. So my studies brought me to the point in which I have discovered certain patterns in the assumed intentions and ambitious desires of those movements. And I could perceive, let's say, a bigger picture of an overall transition in the way of thinking about and doing politics at the beginning of the 21st century, not only on the local level, but I would say in general. And I have described it as an emergence of a citizen-centered paradigm of politics, which basically tries to bring citizens at the very center and core of our democratic decision-making systems to make them directly involved in public governance. Thus, then, the crucial element of this paradigm of politics is citizens' empowerment, focus on responding to their needs and problems, the problems of our communities, our common, what we call our common good, and as well as creating decentralized and collaborative networks. We could also talk about it as a kind of process of civic education in practice through the direct involvement in deliberative and participatory processes. So it can be also simply described as democracy in action, with enhanced transparency and accountability of public administration, who treat citizens basically as equal partners, co-producers, and co-creators in political processes. And I think that David, you can follow up on that.
Thank you so much. I was unmuting myself again. So yeah, I mean, we are coming from the use of technology for local decision making and for some cases like political parties and so on, but I have the different perspective on the use of technology for the management of representative democracy, which I disagree with Kasia, that it's the more criticized system, because at the same time it's the only one that it's effectively working for the delegation of power. But for example, there is a long story of innovation in the management of elections and in how can we make elections more easy to access and easy to participate by citizens. And here technology plays an important factor. When we check which are the reasons why elections are commonly being transformed and why we are implementing technology, normally there are three main ideas or three core ideas that probably we can find some resonance on the use of technology at local level or at institutional level. First of all, to try to enlarge the electorate. We could see, for example, how the history of human being has been a history of expanding constantly the electorate in order to try to make the elections the more representative as possible to the existing society. From the first elections, where just some people that they hosted some positions of power were able to take the decisions, to general elections where men, women, whatever people from whatever condition, whatever race could take part in elections. There has been a long effort to enlarge the electorate, not without fighting for human rights and so on. Technology is contributing to that. For example, this summer I was conducting a case study. I was a visiting researcher at the University of New South Wales in Australia, and I could see, for example, how in Australia, voting is compulsory, and the fact of making voting compulsory makes the government to be able to think on which is the most convenient way to include all the people in the decision-making process that entails an election. So, for example, they introduced some years ago, an internet voting channel to make it easier to include people who have visual disparities in the electoral system without them having to delegate the vote to someone else who would vote on their behalf. So technology is something that could help enlarging the electorate and making it more easy for everybody to participate. Second idea, connected with what I was saying before, that we live in mobile worlds, that every time it's more complicated to be in the place that you need to be when the elections are happening. The use of technology makes the system more convenient. So if, for example, if you're able to vote using the internet, it's easier for you to cast your vote wherever you are, in whatever situation you are. And it opens the door to renegotiating the rules of elections and, for example, voting in advance on the elections so that your vote is already casted. I was doing, for example, all my postdoctoral period in Estonia. I was working in Tallinn University of Technology and University of Tartu, and I was studying deeply the internet voting system that is being used in Estonia. And for example, that's one of the reasons that they have there for introducing this internet voting channel, is to make it more convenient to people in order to keep the turnout levels high. Generally, when we are talking about the use of internet, for example, for casting votes, there is this expectation that internet voting is going to raise the participation, and it has been demonstrated in research that it's not the case. Internet voting is per se not increasing the participation, but it's making it easier in case the people wants to participate. So it helps not to decreasing the participation. There is one idea that it's interesting, that, for example, it's commonly said that a good voting system, it's not going to bring more voters to the system, but a bad voting system will indeed decrease the number of people who are taking part in the elections. And we can see it quite often, for example, with expats voting. So how voting as an expatriate, for me, for example, that I'm voting in Catalonia and in Spain elections from Poland, it's very complicated. And the fact that the system is very complicated is making very difficult for me to find the motivation to take part in the elections. Again, you could see it in the Polish elections recently, the long queues that people had. The use of technology indeed makes it more convenient. And the use of technology also helps to deal with other cases or with other situations. You have our neighbors here in Ukraine that they are having a war, and generally they should be having elections next year. And they have an important decision to make, whether they are going to make elections in person and in place, with the risk that it entails, because there are some places where obviously elections will not be possible, and that will be used an excuse to diminish the quality of the electoral results in the country, or they go on elections online, which probably it will be complicated given the time period that we are and the complexities of organizing internet elections, but that would allow people to take part on that, allowing at the same time the appearation of other discourses that they are bringing distrust on the system because it's open for possible hacker attacks and so on and so on. Later, when we will go on the pros and cons of using of using technology for decision making. Probably we will bring back some of these topics, because I don't want just to make a super positive vision of that, because obviously it has its complexities and its risks, and I'm not here to sell internet voting, but to contribute to the debate on whether this is good or bad. But you see here 4 pictures, for example, that there are 4 pictures that the Ukrainian case I already mentioned, but the other 3, they are pictures from different places in the world where different types of technology has been implemented for voting. For example, the first one, this map, it's a map of Switzerland, where Switzerland is the place where postal voting was born, because as you probably imagine how Switzerland is looking like, it's a country that it's full of valleys, and every valley has almost their own languages, and it's full of cantons, and every canton has its own legitimacy to take their own decisions and so on. And they developed postal voting because as they were living in valleys, there were many people that they were constantly traveling. And they introduced a postal voting system because they have a very democratic tradition in which 4 times per year they are organizing referendums for taking decisions that they are influencing the overall status of the country. So for people who were traveling, they started inventing a system for voting by post, so that would allow the people who were traveling to still take part in the democratic tradition of the country. And it's not surprising that this has evolved today into an internet voting system, and it's one of the countries where internet voting is more advanced, and it has been returned after some years. The second case that you have on the right it's a picture of Brazil, and in Brazil they introduced electronic voting several years ago because they are one of the biggest democracies in the world. You can imagine, for example, how many days it takes to count the votes that are being casted in Polish elections, that the final results, I think they are normally coming after 3-4 days after the elections. And Poland is a country with 40 million citizens, probably 25 million voters we could expect, or 25 to 30. Brazil, we are talking about lots and lots of people. Counting the votes, it's something that it would take ages. So therefore, it's really difficult to count everything without using technology. So in this case, technology is bringing more convenience. If you go, I think that you passed one slide. I will just mention one little thing on the previous slides. If you go back one. The last photo that you have down there on the left, and that's a bit of a funny story. This is a photo of Iceland, because in Iceland they used to have paper voting, and they were considering introducing internet voting to make more convenient the management of elections, not for voters, but for the management of elections. Because Iceland, if you imagine how is Greenland, if you imagine how is the island of Greenland, it's an island that formerly belongs to Denmark, but they have their own autonomy and their own parliament, so therefore they have their own elections. And there are some populated places that they are generally in the coast. But in their constitution, it's written that that the votes need to be counted in one central spot in the country where all the votes are gathered, and the results needs to be announced before 24 hours after the elections, meaning that at the end of the election day, the people need to bring the votes to this place, and then they need to count them. So the votes are being brought by helicopter when the election day is finished. But there was one election that the helicopter was not working. And they were on the edge of having a constitutional problem or having to repeat elections in case they would not manage that the votes are going to be in the right place on the right moment. So they had to organize a sledge pulled by dogs that was moving the votes from one part of the country to the other in order that they would be on time. Of course, in this case, technology is just an anecdote and a funny story. But in this case, internet voting or using electronic means to passing the votes from one part of the other to the country would indeed increase the convenience of the system and would allow democracy to happen. Anyway, there are many reasons for introducing technology in elections. Let's go to the next slide now. Yes, please. And that opens the question where we are heading to, because here, for example, we are having an interesting debate between what Kasia is putting on the table and between I am putting on the table, and trying to put technology in this axis that we are having between using technology to improve representative and aggregative democracy. So representative democracy understood as this type of democracy in which we are using elections to transmit and delegate the power to others, and aggregative democracy, this type of democracy in which we are trying to gather the maximum number of people in order to make the results more legitimate. And other types of democracy, like it can be deliberative or direct democracy asking constantly the people what they think about certain things in order to get more guided to get guidance on the decisions that we are making as a society, and develop deliberative democracy in order to try to engage the people in the decision-making process by putting them on the political discussions. Technology here, as you can see on this axis, can be implemented in both places. But per se, the use of technology is not going to transform our democracy. We could see, for example, when we are comparing the cases of the CDIM or the cases of the Estonian internet voting system, how they are obviously improving the things that they are doing, each of them on their own side, but still we are still living in a representative democracy where we can complement this representative democracy with other sources of democracy, as it can be the deliberative examples that we have seen with the CDIM and so on. But at the end of the day, when the government is out, the CDIM system can continue providing solutions for the next government, but still the delegation of power, it's still done using representative democracy. But still, where we are heading to, it's an interesting debate on what technology is going to bring and how technology can contribute, if so, to the transformation of the understanding of democracy. And here probably we can continue debating later, but I would jump to the next slide so that we are not stealing so much time. And we will talk a bit about the pros and cons of using technology in politics. First of all, I mean, I try to make a balanced picture in which we need to assume and see the potentials of technology, but at the same time, we need to see the risks. And here we classify the risks in three parts. There are risks that they are referring to the technology itself. So is the technology secure enough to be implemented? And that's something that is crucial and very important because, of course, insecure technologies have been used in several places, and that brings lots of problems because it can bring to problems that they are connected with the fact that other people can access the technology, that it's not cyber secure, that what happens with the data that we are providing there, with the privacy of the vote, with the privacy of the opinion, and so on and so on, and also with the integration between the offline and the online systems that has been one of the reasons for failure on many cases of use of technology. But it's not only related to the technology, but the risks also connect with which use we are making of technology, because depending on which type of technology we are implementing and how we are using, we can transform really well-oriented participation processes into fake participation processes that they are manipulated by those who are dealing with technology. And this is really problematic, not only for this case that might be corrupted, but for the overall understanding of the trustworthiness of the system. Just having, I mean, I'm normally making research on trust and distrust, and trust normally works on the fact that the system is providing the things as they are expected. But distrust is raised with cases in which it's proven that the case was not trustworthy. So therefore, if we are not using technology in a proper way, we are at risk of diminishing all the potential that the use of technology might have, because people might end distrusting the technology because some people might not be using it correctly. So, for example, organizing bad participation processes, manipulating the tool, manipulating the technology, using artificial intelligence to try to influence opinion. For example, all the case that happened with Cambridge Analytica and their efforts to try to manipulate the American elections and so on. And the third stream in which we can find risks, it's related not to the use and not to the technology, but to the impact that this use of technology is having. So, for example, the increase of disinformation, the increase of polarization. I mean, we can see it, for example, in Poland, in the last elections, it was like all against one party. So there was a big polarization between parties that in a normal democratic situation, probably they would have never gone hand by hand. But in this situation of polarization, it was making some strange friendships, at least for a foreigner having a different perspective of what is right and what is left, probably that the one that you have in here. It can have an impact on the creation of trust on the political representatives. It can have an issue connected with which is the technology that is providing the system. And now if we can go to the next slide referring to the opportunities, because again, it's not everything about the risks that it has that we need to take them into consideration, but there are also other opportunities that we will see on the next slides when we will have it here. And the same three examples, they can be provided when we are talking about the opportunities of the use of technology. First, opportunities of technology. Technology makes things faster. Technology makes things efficient, and technology has some capabilities that that normal traditional offline processes they do not have. For example, in the capacity to reach other people, in the capacity to organize things, for example, to organize elections during pandemic, or to keep engaging people with decision making under COVID-19. Or for example, Kasia, who was positive in COVID, and she's here today having a meeting. So that's also thanks to technology that provides the capacity to do things that otherwise we would not be able to do. But not only related with the technology, but with which use we are doing. It opens the door to do other things with this technology, like, for example, introducing open data, and making technology, allowing people to access the decision-making processes, making the system more convenient, as I was trying to say. And the third stream related with the impact of the use of technology. So open data calls for other forms of government, for other calls of other ways of organizing open government, open structures of government, allowing or based on the fact that we can organize other ways of decision-making. Other ways of the appearance of other types of civic technologies or civic engagement, empowerment, increasing the capacity of agency of citizens by decentralizing the decision-making processes and so on. So again, when we are deciding on, when we are discussing on the use of technology, probably we need to make some analysis of checks and balances of which type of technology and for which reason we are introducing it. And I guess here, Kasia, you will probably continue going to the last slides.
Yes, I think that we can basically here stop our presentation and open the discussion. As I imagine our audience this evening has already received quite a lot information and food for thought. Here you can see some more questions for inspiration for our following discussion. And the general question that we would like to raise is, do you really believe that technology can itself can transform the political organization and our structures and relations? And then also something that we also wanted to stress is the need for elaborating transnational standards and legal regulations for digital democracy, as so much has been said about regulating the use of artificial intelligence, but this is not the only issue when it comes to the use of digital tools in politics, as you could see in our presentation.
Okay, so is it like time for our questions that are prepared for our talk right now? Okay, so we have 6 questions.
Looking forward.
Okay, let me just read on the first one. So the first question is about fair technology in politics. So how can we make sure that the computer programs guiding political decisions are fair and don't favor any particular group?
I can start if you feel like. Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously an important question, because when we are introducing technology, one of the main problems is that, and this is one of the questions, for example, in my topic of expertise on the use of internet voting, how when we are introducing internet voting, for example, there is always the question of if internet voting is going to alter the results of the elections. And that's something that is very important, because we need to be sure that the system stays being fair. For example, when internet voting was introduced in Estonia, and still today, there is this fear from some more conservative parties that internet voting is going to bring more young people to the elections, and therefore it can transform the electoral results. And the reality and the analysis of data shows that it's not the case. And even it's somehow the opposite, that elderly people, as soon as they learn how to use the internet voting system, are the ones that are more sticky to the system, because they are never going back to paper once they learn how to use it. So somehow it's having an interesting opposite effect, although we are having still this idea that no, younger people are the one that they're always doing everything online, so therefore when we'll introduce that, they will feel more appeal to use it. But at the same time, I think that we need to think very carefully about the design of the system. But it's, for example, there are different ways of voting all around the world. So for example, in my country, every party has one paper. You are taking the paper, you are putting the paper in the box. And then introducing an internet voting system, it's very easy, because you just would need to replicate the same structure. But in the case of Poland, when you are voting, you are having this massively big paper where you have a long list of people. There are many things on the design of this ballot paper that they are important in order to ensure that everybody has the same options. And the same would happen when we would bring this type of design online. Normally, it's seen that the people who are on the top of these ballot boxes of these ballots are the ones who are getting more votes from people who doesn't know who to vote. So when we are transforming that into online, of course, we need to be sure that we are not introducing gaps or unfair situations because the system is badly designed. That's what refers to elections. I don't know if you, Kasia, would like to say something about fair technology in other dimensions.
Yes, maybe I would add to that. But actually, my biggest worry in all that, in the use of digital technologies in politics, is that we will keep on repeating the same problems of the dysfunctional representative democracies. So just transfer the same mechanism online, and this way I have an impression that we're just going in circles, while what in my view we really need is a more broad and deep systems change.
And I guess Kasia connection is broke again. So let me ask a question about this question again. So what I heard, what you said is the right way to make this work is to design the online tool to be in a way the same like the offline tool. So the tool itself wouldn't be suggesting any answers, right, for voting. Is it correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the same way that when you are going to the polling station to vote in paper, you cannot get suggested which party you should vote when you're going to vote in paper. So obviously online it shouldn't be different, because that would be against the fairness of elections.
Okay, and how about the technology adaptation? Because those people that didn't born into era of internet, they might be just having fun with the paper, right? So how to maybe encourage them to use online tools?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Normally, in every place where internet voting has been provided, there is generally this rule that it's just an alternative system, so that it's your decision whether you want to use internet paper. You can still go to vote internet voting, or you can still go to vote on paper. So that's the main way that I would recommend that it should be introduced in every serious election, because if not, you're introducing a different gap by using this technology by all those who at the beginning they don't want to use that. So for example, the introduction of internet voting in Estonia, it was like on the first election, I think it was 1.7% of the citizens were using that, and now they are in more of 50%. And it's already almost 20 years that they are using the tool. So it's a steady growth, but you cannot put it on the first day, because then it would be a massacre for the people who are not used to that. And it would be very complicated to adjust the system to the amount of people that they would need to use it. And that has been one of the main failures generally. So Kasia, now that you're back. Sorry.
Okay, right. So gradual and stable growth of users, right? I guess Kasia broke again. Sorry, our internet is probably bad today. So
yeah.
maybe we can just go on to the second question and we can come back if needed.
Yep.
So the second question is about the equal access to the tech. So how do we ensure that everyone, regardless of their background, can use the benefit from the technology used in the politics? So I guess we partially answered this question, but I guess it's worth talking about, discussing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there need to be some learning process, of course. I mean, one of the particularities and one of the difference, for example, of using technology in elections and using it at a local level, that is that in the case of elections, everything needs to be ready for one particular day. While at local level, you can make tests, because if it's not working today, it can work tomorrow, because the participatory process, normally the shape it has, it's more like long lasting in the time. So if there is one day, one technological gap, it can be solved. So then people have time to train on the participatory processes, while on the case of elections, people need to know how to use the system on the particular moment in which the system needs to be operative. And that's the main thing when we are trying to ensure that everybody can benefit from that. So there need to be a learning process so that people can do it. The question is about the time span. As I said before, in the case of Estonia, it took 20 years to get 50% of the citizens participating online. That's something that we are normally not used to think on our time span, that no, let's start this technology because in 15, 20 years, it's going to be fully operative for the people. Normally, we want to use it on the day one, and that would require lots of efforts to make people to have access and to benefit from that. And that's something that we can think of on social participation, but on elections, we need to think on way longer periods.
Sure. So you also talk about Brazil, and it is one of biggest democracies. So are they more digitalized than Estonia, or it's a different process?
They use a different type of technology. They use machines for casting votes. So they don't have the machines are disconnected from the internet, and they just connect to the internet for transmitting the votes. But the question is that in Brazil, voting is compulsory. And when you make the same case that I said before in Australia, when you make voting compulsory, you need to provide the means for people to participate. Otherwise, it's very complicated and it's a bit unfair with the people that you are forcing them to go to the elections, but they need to make the effort to do it. So the government feels the call to make that. But also the fact that being compulsory means that many people are going to vote. And the results need to be announced, because one of the main sources of uncertainty or distrust is the moment in which the votes are being counted. Because we still don't know who won. So more than one person, if the elections are going to be closed, more than one person can attribute that they are going to win the elections. And this is something that is socially very complicated because it brings lots of controversies. So the counting of the votes needs to be done fast to avoid this gap in which there is no power and whatever thing can happen on this moment, particularly in countries where political situations, it doesn't tend to be particularly stable. So Brazil, for example, they use machine voting to avoid this kind of problem. But they have some machine that you go there, you press a button, you vote for one particular party, and then the votes are counted in the machine, and the machine is providing some results that are being transmitted. So that makes that the results are announced quite fast after that.
Okay, so is it any country that is actually 100% digital in this process? Like you can vote remotely anywhere you are?
No, there is no country where you can just use internet for voting. Brazil, for example, you can use only machines for voting. There is no paper, they're just machines. But only internet, there is no country where you can do it.
But is it like, so Estonia is the closest one to be fully digital, or is there any country more digital than Estonia?
There are some more. I mean, it's not about which one is more digital, but there are some countries that they are using digital systems. So, for example, Estonia, Switzerland, Canada is using internet voting for local elections. Australia was using internet voting. Now it's on standby. And there are many other countries that are using it for expatriates. That is one of the most common trends now. So, for example, France is using it for expats, Pakistan is using it for expats, Panama is using it for expats, El Salvador, it's introducing it. Ecuador was having some experiments on that, and now they are discussing that. Norway was trying. So there are many countries that are using it for expats, because it's the type of community that it's more problematic, because we cannot rely on postal voting as we were doing in the past. Well, in Poland, you know it quite good with the failed postal elections during pandemics, but the postal systems are not operative in the way they were in the past. So these are the ones that we need to find more common solutions. But I think we could engage Kasia back in the discussion, because now I think that you have a better connection, right?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you, David, for overtaking the discussion and answering the questions. I just have an impression that we really focused on iVoting and like online voting mechanisms, and this is also something that particularly is worrying me when it comes to discussing the role and the use of digital tools in politics. That we are basically copying the same model and of decision making and governance that is based on voting and representative parliamentary democracy online. So there is also a huge risk of repeating the same mistakes and having this similar kind of problems as we have currently, but in the digital sphere. So what I wanted to stress that by simple introduction of digital tools, we are not going to change anything when it comes to solving lots of challenges, starting from gaining more trust in our societies, considering like the growing problem of polarization, the growing problem of mis and disinformation, the massive amount of fake news and deep fakes being spread together with hate speech. So although there are and I think that case of disinformation is a great example that although we have some tools, for example, enabling us to spot fake news or recognize deepfakes. Such tools are developed, for example, by MIT. Still, I have an impression that we are just going in vicious circles. And this way, fighting disinformation becomes like a like kind of a fight with windmills, because we're not really solving the problem at its roots. But it seems like these are kind of like desperate trials to respond to those challenges that are inherited they are intrinsic to the system of the representative democracy itself. So here I would also like to maybe open the floor for the discussion more towards those alternatives that we have, and I think that the teal community is also a great example of self-organization and autonomous systems of governance that prove to work in practice, either with or without the use of digital tools.
That is correct, although I need to point out that most, maybe not most, but many of those companies really use or depend heavily on those tools. Not most of them, but still, you need the technology to make things happen nowadays, right? So we need that technology. Like right now, we use the technology so we can speak with each other. So it's this is how things work right now. So,
but I somehow, if I can say one thing here, I somehow agree with what Kasia is saying, that in the way that technology is not going to change anything. I mean, we are just reproducing the good and bad things of every type of decision-making system. So in elections, technology can contribute to make things better, faster, efficient, but at the same time, it's bringing other risks that we didn't have. And when we are talking about social participation, somehow it's the same. One of the interesting things, because finally, if not, we would just reproduce the same debate between the understanding of the different types of democracy, but just with technology as an excuse to have this debate, is that technology can bring both worlds closer. In the way that, for example, I know that the people from the CDIM, that it's something that Kasia knows very well, they're introducing an internet voting system in order to introduce a validating tool at the end of the participatory processes, in the way that we know that one of the endemic problems of social participation is the capacity to attract people and to engage people in the discussion and in the deliberation, that it happens offline and online. And it's one of the problems that generally they have. Deliberation is very interesting and it's bringing lots of good ideas, but at the end of the day, the number of people that is participating on that, it's quite reduced, and that would reduce the legitimacy of the decisions that are taken. But what they're trying to introduce is like an internet voting system at the end that would open the door to more people to participate, to absorb the debate that the deliberation provoked, and therefore increase the legitimacy of the decisions that are being made. But still with that, we would need that the political structures would accept that the results of both the deliberation and the voting are the ones that are going to guide the policy. And this goes far beyond the capacities of the technology. Technology can help the process. Technology can gather people. Technology can make things easy, assuming that we are taking some risks with that. But then the way of transforming democracy or changing democracy relies on the political structures. Technology can contribute, and with their stepping stones to make things happen. But if you don't want to create a teal community, you could have the technology, but you need to have the will. So in order to transform democracy, there need to be the will to transform democracy. Otherwise, technology can be used for this and that or for whatever.
Yes, so similar in the case of teal organization, the culture is the key, not the technology itself. So definitely, we need to trust each other to make things happen. Are we going to make forward? Are we going to forward? Are we going to the next question? Okay. So the third question is about secure voting with blockchain, and is it a good idea to use blockchain as a secure digital system for voting? And how do we protect people's privacy and prevent cheating? So I know that you might be thinking that blockchain is not so much secure, and we can talk about this from the technical point of view, because I know a little bit about the blockchain from technical point of view, but please answer the question first.
Yeah, I can start if you want later.
Yes, I give you the whole floor, David.
No, I will not talk from the technical perspective, but just from a basic approach to that is that, okay, blockchain can be an interesting organizational setup to distribute and decentralize whatever process. But in the case of trying to keep the security of a voting process, the generalized agreement on the community of experts is that it's a bad idea, in the way that what you're doing with that, it's increasing the number of places where a system could be attacked, and therefore that makes it much more vulnerable. So one of the positive things of, at least in elections and in some systems, is that the fact that it's being centralized allows to put resources to protect the centralized spot where all the things are happening, and then to make it more secure, which doesn't mean 100% secure, but more secure. But as soon as you open the door to blockchain for at least for voting, that is complicated, because you don't know who are all the members of the node. And even if there is some kind of internal regulation that protects the different parts of the members, it increases the chances that one of the members could be corrupted, and therefore would introduce problems in the overall counting. So generally, and this is not me because I'm not a technician, but that I'm normally in relation with people who have technical knowledge, is that the use of blockchain for voting is generally not a good idea, not a path to follow. It could be useful for other things. I don't deny that, but for voting, it's not a good idea.
Okay, Kasia, are you going to say something about that before I will answer?
Well, I can only say that there are lots of hopes related with blockchain technology, but I think that it's still a little bit too early to really estimate. Like, yes, like the level of security, and this is still something under development. And yes, that's also quite a technical question that, as a political philosopher, I'm not really, able to go into details.
Okay, so let me talk about this a little bit, because David, when you said about the protection of centralized system versus the decentralized one, it was an argument that I didn't anticipated. I didn't thought about this, and it's hard for me to say, is it really like does it really need to be protected? I mean, the blockchain at this point. But I would say I will say what is my concern about this, because there is something else that need to be considered about the blockchain and all those systems, is about it can be decrypted, not now, but it might be decrypted using quantum computing. So it's not maybe a common knowledge, but it will happen sooner or later. So there is a movement. I don't remember the name of this movement, but it is in US. So there are people actually working already on how to protect blockchain after we have broke the blockchain with the quantum computing. So that would be my first concern about this technical stuff here. And about the protection of those things, I think it's quite secure beside this quantum thing. So the main concern from my perspective as a technical guy, I guess, or at least a little bit techie, would be the quantum computing and the ability to break this. So this is my main concern. But beside that, I'm quite sure it's rather safety. Per se.
Yeah, but that affects not only blockchain, but every type of technology. I mean, one thing that we need to be aware of is that technology is terribly mutable. I mean, what is secure today might not be secure tomorrow. So therefore, I mean, it's something that is very different when we were doing the things offline, either social participation, either voting. I mean, we know that the system, the risks we can anticipate, but when we are going digital, when we are going technological, the risks are changing, the security is changing. So every time we have more secure systems, but at the same time, the insecurities are muting also, and we are changing, and we need to be ready to respond them. So that's why when we are using technology, we can never say that the system is 100% secure. We can say that it's very secure in the current status and the current situation, but if something happens that it was not expected, we need to take everything very, very carefully. That's why the main argument with blockchain is that as we cannot control all the part of the process, it's very difficult to be sure that all the part of the process is going to be secured as the part that we can control. And therefore, that makes the system more vulnerable for only this particular reason. Then, if all the chain is perfectly secure and so on, wonderful, but we have no capacity to control all the chain because that's the main property of blockchain.
Exactly.
So again, it's a good technology for many good things, but for this particular thing, the general consensus is that either we are not ready, either this is not the path to follow. But for other things, yeah, nothing against that.
I would add to that that just like in case of lack of 100% of security in online systems, we also cannot guarantee such a full security even in our traditional voting systems and electoral mechanisms. So again, I would put the focus on a general way of how our systems are designed and just to remind again that the representative model of democracy is not the only one that may be implemented, and there are also deliberative and participatory models of democracy, which in a way are more secure by the design itself, in the sense that they are based on exactly the idea of deliberation and not simple voting mechanisms. So this excludes from the very beginning the possibility of, for example, manipulation of the votes of the whole public discourse, as in the deliberative model. The basis for the discussion, for the decision-making political process, are rational arguments based on scientific evidence. And it's a much more complex process than just giving a vote, or just like in the case of direct democracy and referendums, saying yes or no, which opens up like a huge possibility of various manipulations, as we could see, for example, in the case of Brexit, or the last referendum that was fortunately very unsuccessfully organized in Poland.
Yeah, and I think this brings us to another question. If I may,
sure.
Let me read it. So the fourth question is about AI in political campaigns. So should we be concerned about the computers helping political campaigns, and what rules should be in place to stop them from using our personal information in the wrong way, like retargeting or something like that on social media? So I guess, David, maybe you first.
Yeah. I hope my connection will be stable now. Sorry for that. Yeah, I think that this is one of the main sources of problems that we can witness in the future, in the way that I'm pretty sure that knowing how the high level of polarization and competition that we have in elections, AI is going to be used to try to take advantage and to influence political campaigns. We could see, for example, on the case of the war that we were referring, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, how there was one video that was posted at the beginning of the war, one of the first 3-4 days of the war, when Russia's attack was more intensive, that there was President Zelensky. He was saying that they would surrender, and it was done by artificial intelligence, and then they had to react and say that this is not true. And in this case, in this particular moment, this use of artificial intelligence could have changed the course of the war if people would have followed that. So I'm pretty sure we are going to witness things like that, especially now that we can reproduce voices and faces of people and so on. So how there will be discourses that they are done with the intention of manipulating the intention of the people on taking decisions, on participating, and so on. So I think this and detection of misinformation and the use of artificial intelligence for that, it will be one of the core issues that we will have to check in the future. But again, this is the use of technology on side aspects connected with political life, not so much with the decision-making process, but on trying to influence the decision-making process, which in a way it's legitimate because this is the part of political competition, but it loses the legitimacy as soon as they are trying to cheat instead of to inform and to validate my point by my own arguments, not against the other.
Right. I think that we are in a very special moment in history that artificial intelligence actually can turn tide of a war. So back in the Second World War, there was I guess the attitude for the intelligence itself, or I guess it was the First World War even, that war intelligence wasn't that much of importance back those days. But when the British intelligence intercepted the telegram from Nazis to the Mexico, it really got the US attention. So the Nazis proposed to the Mexico to attack the US and to share some land between the Nazis and the Mexico. So it was like the first time in the world history that such a small information turned tide, I guess, of the war. So this is the next step of it, because the artificial intelligence isn't just about an intelligence, but it's making or forging facts, right? So fake news and stuff like that. Kasia, are you going to answer this question also?
Well, actually, I can. I was thinking about tackling this question from a bit different perspective. So I don't know if I was online at the time when I was mentioning that there are some tools that are developed among others by MIT, which can really help us to spot fake news or recognize deepfakes. But in my view, these are still kind of just reactions to those powerful and destructive phenomena that are put in place after the problem happened. So instead of thinking how to prevent, like how to introduce the preventive mechanisms, we are reacting to the dysfunctions of the systems that are inherited in this system itself. So instead, I would suggest we should focus on our collective efforts first on building more positive narratives. So using a democratic language, developing new terms and ways of talking about democracy or our democracies. And looking for constructive alternatives, so including more democratic governance systems and decentralized networks of organization. And here also the Thiel model could be very helpful. So second, I was also I was already mentioning elaborating preventive mechanisms, which instead of repeating same mistakes and fighting with the so-called windmills, like in the case of disinformation, would bring our focus on deep systemic changes that are required to get out from this vicious circle in which we found ourselves while applying the model and functioning in the system of parliamentary democracies based on traditional voting mechanisms instead of public participation and deliberation. And in particular, I see the enormous need to use the collective intelligence of transnational community of experts, researchers, activists, and practitioners of democratic innovations to first of all co-create standards for digital democracy and general use of digital tools in politics, and not only in relation to the fast development of artificial intelligence, but in general. Considering that nowadays every movement and a party can basically apply whatever tool they find useful for their particular interests and gaining popular support, it is just very, very dangerous to leave this whole sphere unregulated. I think we also need to consider a more future-oriented approach and ask about the far-reaching impact of those tools on the development of our political systems, but also our everyday relations, like in the case of growing polarization. So ask ourselves in what kind of societies, in what kind of structures and systems we want to function. And also reflect on the way we actually want to organize ourselves in our modern society. So coming back to the important question already stated previously by David, where are we heading to?
That's right. In the meantime, I found the history fact that I told you about, because we are going to the question about the fake news. So back in the First World War, there was a telegram received by they found it. The United Kingdom found it and give it to Americans, and the Nazis actually proposed to the Mexico that if Mexico would declare war on US, they would receive the New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. So that was the proposal from the Nazis. So it was the first time in the history of humankind that this small piece of information actually, I guess, turned tide of a war. So right now, I guess we are in the times that this, let's call it a telegram, can be forged, like in the case of fake news. So let's go to the fake news question, finding the fake news online. With the fake videos and false information spreading online, what can we do to make sure people get the actual right facts during the political discussion?
Kasia, would you like to start, since you're on the
Well, first thing that comes to my mind is the importance of digital literacy education, as well as proper civic and so-called STEM education, so that people have these basic skills, for example, in critical thinking, and also kind of digital resilience, and not the tendency to fall into, for example, conspiracy theories and believing in all the fake news and hate speech that is being currently spread online. And it's like on an unprecedented scale. as I also see lots of patterns that are being repeated in the context of the international partnership in the project that I'm currently coordinating. So best practices in exporting expertise to counter Russian disinformation. I see that there are lots of challenges related to disinformation that just tend to repeat in various countries all around the world. And here I would also stress the importance of transnational collaboration and solidarity, and also exchange of knowledge about those best practices to be applied in practice. So like not to start things from scratch, because we're all dealing with similar problems. Yes, literally all around the world.
Okay, David.
If I can make my 5 cents on that, I think it's really difficult, because on the main definition of fake news, I mean, first we need to distinguish between two types of fake news. First ones, the ones that are obviously fake for everyone and that they have a clear intention of damaging, and then other ones that they are sometimes labeled under fake news, but they are like different interpretations of the same story, that for some part of the polarized citizenship it could mean yes, and for the other part it would mean no. And this is a really gray area where it's really difficult to get in, because it's complicated. I think if we focus on the ones that are blatantly fake news, one of the problems that they have is that they generally reproduce something that people are wishing to hear. Even if it's not true, they reproduce something that people are hoping that it would be true, so that's why they believe on that. And we could see it, for example, with vaccination and COVID and so on, how some of the arguments that they were against vaccinations, that, I mean, for me, that I'm a person who believes in science as a scientist, they were objectively absurd and difficult for me to understand that someone could believe on that, unless you have a really strong will to believe this fake news. And then when you have this will, it's really complicated to fight against that, because you can try to prove that the fake news is fake, but for certain parts of the society, that would be part of the fake. So that would make the things very, very complicated. So I think it's really difficult to fight with fake news. What can we do? Of course, try to combat them by providing arguments, knowing that not everybody is willing to hear those arguments, because there is a part of the people that they're already convinced that this is true, that the arguments will just make zero effect. But I think that what we need to aim is that the majority of the population, if they will, they can have access to the right information, meaning at least proving the things that are fake, that we can demonstrate that they are fake. And then if we cannot reach, I mean, this is like a normal distribution, normal statistical distribution. Our aim is that 80% of the population will be convinced that this is not true. And then on the two extremes, the remaining 10 and 10%, it's really difficult to convince everybody that something is false, because it's impossible, let's say, to eliminate all the fake news that we will have. So the question is that what we need to do is to try to bring arguments so that the majority of the population could see clearly that what is a fake news and what is not a fake news. But of course, during political discussions, the number of fake news is just increasing because of the tension of the moment and the crossed interest that we have here. For example, I agree with the perspective that Kasia is putting, that one of the problems of parliamentary elections is that the level of political tension turns to be very high in certain key moments. So then this is the moment where many things happen, either cyber attacks, either disinformation, either campaigns to alter the results, either whatever, because the level of controversy and political tension and interest that they're at stake, it's really high. But this is the system that we currently have, so it's difficult to fight against that. We need to assume that it is like that and try to protect it until we are able to change it, if this is what we want to do.
You brought up a very interesting idea that people are actually looking for news like that, and those news are kind of designed for those people to find them. And there are like 10% on one end and 10% on the other end of people who don't believe or believe extremely to those kind of things. So my thought was maybe there is a way, I'm not calling it a blockchain, but maybe a different kind of thing to make it more authentic, right? It's certification of some kind, but it's my techie thinking right now. But let's jump into the last question, because
if I may only, if I can only make just a small promotion, actually, also of the tools that are being developed by TechSoup Europe, together with our global network of partners. So there is a so-called Hive Mind platform. I can also share with you later the link. So it's an online platform and kind of a repository of knowledge on fighting disinformation, with the whole set of concrete tools that can be that are ready to be implemented, and all the information related to best practices that are translated in more than a dozen of languages. So it's also kind of transnational in its dimension, and I would really recommend to take a look, as it's full also of interesting online webinars and courses in relation to the problem of disinformation and how to deal with it.
Yeah, I guess I found it. So this is the link. Great, thank you.
Right.
I think that is definitely worth checking out. I actually sign up during your talk right now, so I will check this out. So let's go back to the last question, and it's about tech companies in the politics. So considering big technology companies have a lot of power, how do we make sure that they don't have too much influence over how our government works? Who's first?
David?
Yeah, I can start. No problem. Difficult because, power generally goes hand by hand with power. So, and we need also to assume that our political structures, they are every time less and less able to make decisions that they have real big affectation on the population, in the way that part of the power has been already moved to the market and has been already moved, we like it or not, to the companies, and those who are able to make the important decisions are not anymore elected, meaning that the capacity of elected members to influence social life, it's reducing little by little, as long as we are evolving this capitalism that we have, in which big corporations are able to put pressure and to make decisions and to transform the laws in order to make them more friendly for them. So I think this is somehow a lost battle. Maybe I'm a bit pessimistic with that, but I have the feeling that it's a lost battle. Companies, not only tech companies, but generally big companies and big corporations and lobbyists and pressure groups and so on, they are able to influence politics in many, many different ways. So therefore, democracy, it's still obviously necessary, because it's one of the only spaces where we, the citizens, can make some difference in trying to change or validate the action of power of those who are ruling the country or whatever institution that we are making, but that doesn't make them to be more stronger against the pressures that companies could make. But still, we can aim in trying to put people in the representation that they are able to counter this influence by bringing other things that they are of public interest, or creating alternative management structures that would allow to preserve certain things that they are interesting for for the citizens, like the logic of the commons, that I don't know, some aspects connected with the degrowth in order to improve the situation of environment and other strategies and other things like that. But still, I think it's undeniable that tech companies, they have lots of capacity to influence politics, also in the electoral sphere.
Okay, I see. Kasia?
Yes, well, I would add to that there are also alternatives, like community-owned cooperatives, online systems, and open source technologies to the solutions that are proposed by big tech companies. So one of the online platforms that I was also presenting before is based on the CDIM open source system. So I also wanted to stress that big companies don't offer the only solutions. There are also organizations such as CopTech, a cooperative based in Warsaw that is promoting this cooperative and not-for-profit technologies. And I also encourage to check their activity. And then I would also mention maybe yes, changing our approach to more critical and a bit less enthusiastic as we are used to when it comes to the digitalization of everything and implementation of digital tools as a best solution for everything. And here I also wanted to mention that there is more and more research and evidence that digital technologies are actually fueling the climate crisis. So just to quote some data, confirming that digital technologies is not only for good, but we should also have it in mind that their impact can be very problematic for our future. So digital technology is responsible for 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Digital technology's share of global greenhouse gas emissions is rising sharply and could double by 2028 to reach 8%, according to the Shift Project's report on the environmental impact of digital technology and 5G rollout. So again, just to balance the pros and cons of the use of technologies and really ask ourselves this basic question: what do we actually want to achieve by implementing digital tools in our political systems, but also our everyday lives?
Right, I think it's not only about its techie company, but it's also like a big company always have its goals, right? So I guess we should always put those in check. These are all questions, and we already passed 7 minutes of our time planned for today. So if you have anything more to add, I propose you do that now, and we will going to finish in a moment.
I would just like to thank you for organizing that and inviting us. I think it was an interesting debate, and hope your community will find some value on that. And we are reachable in case they would have any question and comment, and we would be happy to know them.
I am counting on this, because I will probably have a few more questions after our meeting. Maybe not in not soon enough, but I guess in a month, maybe next year, because I'm working on something and I have some questions, especially for you, David. So you can count that I will probably someday I will just pop on LinkedIn and ask you some questions.
Sure. Happy to.
Thank you very much. Kasia, do you have something more to add?
Yes, thank you for arranging this meeting. I think it's impossible to discuss all these things in details. I think that we still managed to cover quite a lot in this 1.5 hour discussion, and I'm looking forward for deepening this this conversation in a more interactive way. Also next week, I think, Łukasz, you can also add to that there will be some follow-up discussion in Polish language that I will also try to.
Yes, there will be actually a discussion in Polish, so it's a kind of our experiment, because the topic itself is very broad and it's new for our community, but people want to talk about it. So maybe they didn't show up today, but I guess they will just watch it and ask their questions and have the discussion later on Zoom next week. And probably we will have some more questions from that meeting to you, both of you probably. So I will just let you know. And after today's meeting, there will be also a summary on our website. I will send it to you also. So thank you once again. Let's keep in touch, and thank you everyone for watching, and stay in touch for the next Tea Breakfast. Thank you very much.
Bardzo dziękuję. Dobry wieczór.